Oh great, someone is looking at me. There are only two types of people in this world. Those who can grow Hoya serpens and could always grow Hoya serpens without any issues, and then those of us that had to walk through the fiery pits of hell to grow Hoya serpens. And do I think that it's a bit too dramatic? No, absolutely not. There is no such thing as too dramatic here. As you know, I currently have an ongoing video series on the channel Miro's Hoya Summer Camp, and in the first episode of that series I got a very interesting question which will not be addressed in the series, but I thought I could make a video about it, which I don't usually do. I'm very actually bad at doing videos based on what people want. I keep being delusional and I keep thinking that I do know what people want without actually looking at that. But turns out in most of the cases I am not a mind reader. The question was how to grow Hoya curtisii. And you know, this person was hoping that it would be addressed in the Hoya summer camp. It won't be. But I can address it now. And I thought since we are talking about Hoya curtisii that we will talk about similar Hoyas in terms of how to grow them. And those are Hoya curtisii and Hoya tengchongensis. Disclaimer number 2. I had a comment recently that my Hoya tengchongensis may be affinity serpens or Hoya serpens. Now I will address that right away. I don't really know. I have looked at publications of Hoya tengchongensis and Hoya serpens, and really there is no much distinction in terms of leaves according to the publication. That is really not one of the differences. And in the publication of Hoya tengchongensis, it says that the leaves can vary quite a lot. So I feel that we can't really say according to the leaves. My Hoya tengchongensis did come from a reputable source, and if it turns out to be affinity serpens, I do believe that then a lot of the Hoyas in Europe that are sold as tengchongensis will end up to be affinity serpens. But I think this is not a topic for me, as I do not have a botanical background aside from what I read on the internet and ResearchGate and etc. Essentially, we're just gonna talk how to grow them creepers. Do you sometimes wish there was like a different term for creepers? And that is like the term. I checked because I did not want to put the creeper in the title of the video, but hey, who knows, maybe it will get us more clicks and that's good. I would also like to say that this video has been inspired by the conversation that I had with May April FROSTVIT.SE, probably mispronouncing your last name, May April, and I'm very sorry, and by a blog post that she has about growing Hoya serpens on her website FROSTVIT.SE, which I will link in the description below so you can all read it. And of course, growing these plants, I sometimes come to these same conclusions, but unless I get a confirmation from a seasoned Hoya grower, I often gaslight myself and think that that cannot possibly be true. For the longest time, I thought that the unsuccessful cultivation that I had with Hoya serpens is because it is too hot, and this is Hoya that comes from a slightly cooler climate. But then if you look at the region where Hoya serpens grows, it doesn't only grow in Himalayan region. By the way, it's not very cold there at all. I think in the summer it gets to be 25 and it gets to be cooler in winter, but it doesn't really get that cold. The elevation is about 1300 meters. But then it was also found in places like Andaman Islands, and it is a subtropical climate there. So if you actually look where Hoya serpens grows, you will see that she grows in the wet tropical biome. Now this is something that I pretty quickly understood, that Hoya serpens does indeed like to stay moist. Some people say that it likes to dry out. That has never been the experience with my plant, and I will just say there are different clones of Hoya serpens. From my discussion with May April, it seems that a lot of them are also seedlings. Now my Hoya serpens, which I will now show you, you'll get to see her. Drum roll, please. My Hoya serpens is a clone that doesn't have splashy leaves. It produces green leaves. There will be a bit of splash, but most of them are not splashy. And it seems that this clone of Hoya serpens is a bit more challenging. It seems that the one that produces more splash is easier to grow. And I have had this plant for, I would say, 3 years now. I got it in 2020. Actually, maybe it was 2019 when I got this plant, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm just gonna tell you a bit of history here. This is one of the mass-produced Hoya serpenses, And I don't know if it was actually produced in Thailand or in Netherlands. We kind of get all of our plants here from Netherlands. If you get something in a flower store, it will be 100% from Netherlands. But I also know that not all plants in Netherlands are grown there. Some are not, some are imports from Thailand. So I'm not actually really sure about the true origin. But there was this moment, I think late 2019 or maybe early 2020, where they had this one shipment of Hoyas as they were becoming popular, and you could get Hoya serpens, Hoya passiflora, Hoya retusa, Hoya linearis, of course Hoya carnosa, inner and outer variegated, and I believe Hoya methyled and Hoya shuka and Hoya bella. And after that, I never saw Hoya serpens again. And at the same time as this was happening, Hoya serpens, Hoya linearis was impossible to find in the US. I would hear people paying crazy prices for those Hoyas there. But an interesting thing here is that I never saw this plant being sold again. And now I do follow a lot of websites, a lot of shops from Netherlands, and I don't see this being offered. So actually, if someone living in Netherlands could tell me, can you find Hoya serpens in nurseries anymore? Because they used to sell them as sort of big plants in hanging baskets. To move on with the story, I never got my Hoya serpens in the basket. What happens is, you will have a batch of Hoyas or batch of plants delivered here to Serbia, and then you have people who resell and flip plants, and they will buy those right away. They will buy those because they get tips when there will be a new stock of plants. And I called importer as soon as they got these, but they sold them within 5 minutes. So obviously the flippers were already there. I saw it several days later as a very small plant for a very low price. It was under 10 euros. So what happened is they would buy these big pots of Hoya serpens and they would divide them. I don't like this practice. I understand this helps more people have plants perhaps more affordably than buying one bigger plant, but I would prefer if they did it by cuttings, but I understand no one has the time and whatever. That is kind of mistake number one in this Hoya serpens life. Hoya serpens, in my opinion, has something that is called a sensitive root system and a bit of a personality, which does not tend to forgive you if you mess with her. That's what she has. I don't really know how to put that in botanical terms, but don't mess with her. And this plant was shipped to me and it looked fine for 3-4 days, and then she started to lose the leaves and to lose the leaves and it was a never-ending saga. It was very, very, very difficult to get this plant going. Eventually she did get going, but oftentimes she would start growing and die back, start growing and die back. And this is something that a lot of people will experience with Hoya serpens. She will grow and die back, grow, and it's very annoying, very, very annoying. I somehow managed to take a cutting from my plant. I rooted the cutting, I laid it flat on top of the soil, didn't think too much about it. It just seemed to me, because she has a lot of aerial roots, which you can see here, it seemed to me this would be the easiest way to root this plant. And the reason why I did this is because my friend wanted some Hoyas for her birthday, so I kind of created this gift package. My Hoya serpens then died. Yeah, the original mother plant died. It was just too much of trying to grow and dying back. I was just left with a clump of dead vines and a root system, and I just tossed it away, didn't even think about it. Fast forward perhaps a year, my friend decided that she no longer wants to have some of these Hoyas. She decided to keep some of them, but she essentially asked them if I wanted them back, and I did. So she gave me her Hoya serpens, which I rooted, which was a beautiful plant by then. It was like a small plant, but she looked very nice. And at that time, I was growing in semi-hydro, and this is the part where I will once again learn that Hoya serpens does not like to be messed with. I cleaned off the roots, I transferred my plant to semi-hydro, and the issues started again. I like to learn the hard way, the hardest way, with making a mistake and making it again and again and again. So the problems started with my plant again, and essentially I took a couple of cuttings and did the same thing, laid them flat, and I rooted them, one in Ceramis and one in Leca. And they started to grow pretty fast, especially the one in semi-hydro. Oh my gosh, loved it. And at this time, it was that I understood several things about Hoya serpens. First of all, she does not like to be messed with. She does not like you messing so much to, for example, take her from cocoa peat to semi-hydro and stuff like that. That's a huge transition and the roots are sensitive. Second, she does enjoy moisture because in ceramis, which is essentially like a clay medium, and in leca, which is again clay medium, in both of these cases you will have a lot of moisture. She likes moisture. She does not like to dry out like some of the other Hoyas. Unfortunately for me, my Hoya serpent success won't last very long because I had mealybugs. My Hoya serpent again did not do well. Most of the plant died back, and I took a cutting and I decided to lay it flat and root it in cocoa peat and perlite. And that's that plant. This was rooted about 1 year ago from a cutting that was maybe 2 or 3 nodes. It was a very small cutting that I could save. This is what she looks like now, growing pretty fast. She lived through summer. I stayed on top of watering. I kind of moved her to a small self-watering pot for my friend, and now she got a bigger self-watering pot. A lot of these, like this top part, all of those are rooted vines, and it's rooted in many, many, many places. I do believe this is still one of the more sensitive Hoyas that I have. The leaves are very easy to knock off, as I will mention many times. When you get her going, she will grow very fast, but it's also one of the Hoyas that if things start to go wrong, they really start to go wrong all the way. There isn't like a halfway point where, you know, maybe all of these will die and then I can save them. No, it will all die. There are roots in the reservoir here, which doesn't seem to affect the plant at all. She is thriving. She filled out the pot with the roots. What I wanted to tell you about the Hoya serpents, first of all, I don't think this is the most ideal setup. I think a very ideal setup would be a pot that is sort of shallower but wider, that would allow her to root in several places. And this Hoya that you will find in nature rooting at a lot of these nodes, you know, they have all of these small roots. It did prove that for me and for a lot of people in cultivation, it is really necessary for this plant to root in as many places as possible. This is something that I really believe is a true crawler, and the best way to grow her is as such. So it's not typical where you will just take a cutting here and then root this part, which is how you would root most Hoyas, you know, just take a cutting, stick it in the soil. It is best to pin it down, lay it flat, and then she will start growing from all those nodes. My Hoya serpent still did not bloom. I mean, who would after all of those trials, right? But there are a lot of peduncles, and I think she's like in a good place right now where she is well established. I think we may start to see flowers soon. Interesting thing about Hoya serpent that I did learn from May, April is that it seems that the shorter photo period is the trigger, so not the cooler nights. She says that in Sweden, you can see as the days get shorter, you can see her bloom. And this is something that I noticed for a lot of Hoyas that I thought were cool bloomers. For example, my Hoya Polinera bloomed in the middle of the May as the temperatures got higher, but what I did is I moved her to a shadier spot. I'm not saying that there are no Hoyas that like to grow cooler, like Hoya Nehusia is a notorious one. She does not like to be warm at all. But I think for a lot of these Hoyas, it seems that they don't mind some heat. In nature, usually the cooler period is related to the change of seasons and shortening of the day length. So sometimes it can be kind of tricky in plants that grow in those conditions to distinguish, like, what is the actual thing that makes them bloom? Is it the cooler period or the shortening of the day length? My next plant, which may be tengchongensis or affinity serpens, and this is not what this video is about, same thing, but I had more luck with this plant because as I got it, I immediately kind of rooted her that way, crawling on top of the potting mix. And this is something that is a year old now, actually a bit more, maybe a couple of months more than a year, and it has been cut once. She grew really well. The cutting was about 4 nodes or 3 nodes when I got her, so she grew really, really well. And I can see that she really does want to kind of stay close to the ground. Those are really actually stiff vines there. So I think this one maybe even more would benefit from something that is a shallower and wider pot. But I don't find this one to be as sensitive. This is what these two look like, and pretty healthy, pretty good growing. How long they will stay looking good, I don't know. I would prefer a different mix, I will say. This is cocoa peat and perlite, and it is a lot of perlite, but I think I would like a bit more bark in there, but you know, It is now what it is. Girl, what are you doing? I have a vine and leaves developing in soil. Can you see that? Girl, what are you doing? That's like the ground. I do wish that the mix was a bit different, but to be quite honest with you, I am not going to change it. I think it's more likely for me to cut down the entire plant and restart it again than to change the mix, because I know how roots are sensitive and they are really all over this mix. I might not even need to cut it. I think what I can do, if I had enough space, I can just put a pot next to this one and let it crawl and root into that and then just chop that off. And the last one that I want to talk about is Hoya curtisii. This is my Hoya curtisii, and this is actually recently repotted. Maybe it looks a bit messy. It was in a very small pot up until recently, but also when I got this plant, I rooted it in several spots. I laid it flat because I didn't really know what to do. And you know, it's because of me not knowing what to do that I decided to root it as I did, laying flat. Little did I know that was the smartest thing to do. And I will tell you one thing, my Hoya curtisii, it was an 8 centimeter pot. It kind of stayed the same size for a long time. It starts to grow here and to branch out, but they don't grow very long. And as I read May April's blog, I decided to do sort of the same thing. And you can see that I laid them flat and pinned them down, though it's not so easy to do once they get so big and there is this rim of the pot. I think I really should have filled the pot a bit more. That's the challenge. When you have something that you want to pin down, they seem to just want to pop off. I don't really know what is the challenge that people have with Hoya curtisii, but I'm just going to tell you how I grow mine. So first of all, pin her down in as many places as you can, and you will definitely see for sure that she will start to grow more and better. But this is also Hoya that produces on every node and in between. She produces a lot of these aerial roots. So she is an epiphytic creeper. She likes to attach to the trees. Similarly to Hoya serpens, I noticed that Hoya curtisii doesn't really make a huge root system. My plant was an 8 centimeter pot, and that's really all the root system it had, and it was, you know, this long. Imagine it if it was not pinned down, so that's quite big. It may be possible that now we will get a bigger root system as she kind of roots in several places, or in more places than before, but I think it's kind of this thing where they produce like shallower root systems. I think in nature, this plant, what she would naturally do is she would produce multiple shorter roots along the stem. I think that's how they would like to grow instead of having just one central root system, if that makes sense. I do notice that she is a bit sensitive to overwatering sometimes, not always, but again, I really, even when she was in a smaller pot, at best, I watered her every 10 to 12 days. Now she's in a bigger pot, and I try to make the mix as airy as possible with a whole lot of perlite. It's really perlite with a bit of cocoa peat, what we have here. I would suggest maybe to use some bark. I didn't have any at the time, and it's also difficult to pin down stuff in bark when it's hanging. I think that is the trick to growing Hoya curtisii as well. Just make sure that the mix is something that is quite airy. Remember, she is an epiphytic creeper, so she will be attached to the side of the tree in nature, and that's something that really dries out fast. So right now, because she's in this pot that is quite deep, I water her even less. This was watered, I would say more than 2 weeks ago, and I just check to see how dry it is, and I will just give her a quick watering to kind of maybe keep that top moist until they root. This is what she looks like now, and hopefully I will get her to bloom. None of these bloomed for me, and I typically don't like to make videos about Hoyas, you know, highlighting a Hoya species that hasn't bloomed. There are many that have bloomed. I don't know why am I not making videos about them. This is something that people asked about, and I see a lot of people struggling with Hoya curtisii and serpens, and with curtisii I did not have any issues really, but as someone who has had a lot of issues with Hoya serpens, I just thought it would be a good idea to make a video and to kind of share that knowledge. Kind of to conclude this quickly, let the creepers creep, pin them down in as many places as you can, with Hoya serpens and tengchongensis, make sure to keep them moist. With Hoya curtisii, I would use a bit more bark. I would not keep her as moist because she seems to be a bit more prone to rotting there. Try to find a pot that is maybe shallower but wider. When it comes to sun, I think they can be adjusted to higher light. April has more experience with that, so again, I suggest you read her blog article. With Hoya curtisii, it seems to me that she really thrives the best in higher light. I have her right under the grow lights here, hanging off to the side, and she loves that. When it comes to temperature, I don't really think it matters. I would not keep them in too hot or too cold. So in Celsius, like 15 to 30 degrees, I think would be best. Of course, when the temperatures drop, make sure to water less. When temperatures are higher, they will need more water depending on the mix. With humidity, I also have not found them to be that picky, though humidity is always at least 50 here, so maybe I'm not the best person to be the judge of the humidity. I fertilize them every time I water with rain mix, and that is that. Thank you for watching this video. It is the end. You can leave now. Well, actually, no, you cannot leave now because I will ask you to subscribe and like the video and leave a comment how you grow your Hoya serpens and Hoya curtisii. If someone has any additional advice, I would appreciate it. And I think a lot of people would appreciate advice on Hoya serpens and curtisii. They're very cute. They're one of my favorite Hoyas, and we cannot wait to see you bloom, even if you're a stinker, which I think that Hoya serpens is a stinker. I think she stinks. I will appreciate the blooms still. We do have some flowering Hoyas in the back, which I don't know if you can see. This girl is waiting for me to make a reel on her. I could have made a full video, but no. So this is UT033. Very beautiful green flowers. I will attach a beautiful photo that you can see. Should really make more videos about blooming Hoyas. That's all. Goodbye! I would like to take some time to thank my patrons. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. My 3 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenthal, Anne-Margaret Moen, Angela Bernard, Angela Parrish, and C. Ashley Hoyas, Beth Gibson, Betsy, Catherine Molina, Danuve Daniels, Daria Kaminska, Deanne Sikorsky, Farah, Gina Geise, Go Green Tropical, Heather Uppenkamp, Hoji Scott, Houseman Heather, Hoya Heather, Yana Griffin, Jessica Chio, Yohan Denot, Kara, Casey Gross, Kelly Cook, Kelso, Kiwi Mochi, Kristen Sherwood, LaPlante Steph, Mandy Milliken, Marcel Har, Mars B, Martina Alif Berde, Marty Miller, Mary Rose, Melissa Walker, Michael Curley, Nicole Ferranti, Moa Edmond, Neely Yang, Niha Basso, Nicole Moreau, Nicole and Caleb of Schlieve Tropical, Snita Macy, PJ Plan Druid, Rachel Peterson, Robin L. Jennings, Robin Roos, Salam Adal, Sherry Kumar, Stephanie H2O, Sybil Williams, Tanya Tessa Martins, Tia B, TJWO, Wendy Foreman, Wendy Rossman, Youth of the Walamud, Zordarama, and Zlakov Nipani. Also, a big thank you to my $3 patrons: Angelina Farnan, Anna K, Brenda Little, Brianna Phillips, Kilone, Claudia L, Erin Keenan, Lisa Helling, Morgan Kennedy, Nella, Plantelenia Ringlob, and Tang Watanasria Cool. And a thank you to my $1 patrons: Kari, Christina Greengrass, Constance, Couture Helvetica, Emilia Bronson, Joanna Peterson, Jolie Sullivan, Kayla Vavra, Lauren M, Lauren N. Subramaniam, Luzman Fernandez, Neely Spicer, and Olivia Chin-Muller. Thank you all so much for incredible support, and thank you for making these videos possible. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.